Welcome to the Craft to Career podcast with Elizabeth Chappell, where every week we dive into how you can turn your craft into a successful career. Get ready to have the career you've always dreamed of.
Hello, and welcome to episode 67 of the Craft to Career podcast. I am Elizabeth Chappell of Quilter's Candy, the host of the podcast. And this week I feel like a near and dear friend. It's Emily Dennis. She is someone who I absolutely love in the quilting world and such an inspiration for me. I cannot wait to introduce you to Emily and to have her share her story of how she has started her career. What started off definitely not in quilting and how that's morphed. And she shares some fun gems at the end that I really enjoyed hearing. A little bit about her strategy of what she shares on Instagram stories. So there's a lot of fun that we unpacked here. So I cannot wait to introduce you. Let me jump in and let's meet Emily.
So excited to have Emily Dennis here. Emily, for our listeners, can you introduce yourself? Tell us what you do.
Hi. Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm Emily Dennis, as you already said, and the owner and operator over here at Quilty Love, which is a quilt pattern design company.
Yeah, cool. And I mean, for listeners who don't know, I don't even know how I know all that you do. I guess you just share little tidbits on Instagram, but you were a photographer first. And that's I kind of want to just dive into today, like how you started this creative endeavor. What is your background? So let's start there. How did you start this creative entrepreneur experience?
Well, it started a while back. Actually, it started out of boredom. So, so I was raising some toddlers and about to send that youngest toddler off to school, and found myself with a lot of extra time on my hands, and I was bored. So I decided to pick up photography at that time. I was working. I've always been a work at home mom. So I was doing my day job at the time, but I wanted to pick up something that would stimulate me and I could learn something. So I started photography around that time. I think it was just before I sent him off to kindergarten, but that probably kind of snowballed into everything that I'm doing today.
Mm-hmm. So, okay, what kind of camera did you start off with and how did you learn these photography? Was it self-taught? Did you take lessons?
It was self-taught. So I remember vividly when I ordered my first camera, it was a Nikon. I mean, probably kind of like an entry level DSLR. A little nicer than that cuz I didn't buy the camera with like I'm going to do something with this. It was more like I want to learn something and have a hobby. And so it started out as a hobby and I was self-taught. I used to tell people, well, I learned my education from Google, but I literally read everything on Google there was about photography. Like
Mm-hmm.
I learned it
Mm-hmm.
from top to bottom. I loved that process of learning how to do something, and I think that's really where I started and how I got to where I am because I love learning.
Okay. So, I mean, I bought a nice DSLR camera years ago, and it was so hard for me to learn all the things. Like, it felt like math, and my brain was like, no, don't do this. Don't. So, I'm impressed.
I bought this book and it was like the nerdiest book because it was called Understanding Exposure, and it literally took you through that exposure triangle where you had to figure out how the three things work together, the ISO, the aperture, and the shutter speed. And I probably handled that book like a college course. I took notes. I so I really enjoyed like that process of like figuring it out and figuring out the math, but it's commitment, like a
It
lot of
is.
commitment to learn.
It's no
It's something
joke.
like I wish I could teach people how to do it and maybe I could break it down someday, but like once you learn it, it opens up so many doors, but it's a commitment to learn
If
how to
you,
shoot manual and
yeah, if you do teach a course on that, even right now, my brain's like, I don't know, Elizabeth, you've got your iPhone. Like,
well, that's the problem. So that was before like iPhones were huge or where iPhones were really good. Um, I don't know. Would I even recommend people get a DSLR nowadays? I'm not sure I would because there's so much that you can do on the iPhone now. So, I
okay,
mean,
well,
at the
I'm
time, for
very,
me, I just really enjoyed learning the DSLR, and it is still my preference. Like when I take photos,
Mhm.
But I mean, iPhones can do everything, if not more. So
Well, and I've hired photographers, and some of the photos they take, you cannot get that with an iPhone. There are some lenses and some things where I'm like, that's above my skill set and above what my phone has a skill set for. But for, Instagram or whatever, I don't know. I feel like a phone could do the job. So, when you post photos on Instagram, are they mostly DSLR or iPhone?
yeah. I mean, I would probably say it's like 98% DSLR.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. All
Yeah.
right.
I honestly should. I always think I should use my iPhone more, but I do prefer the DSLR. And it could be because that's what I started on.
Mm-hmm.
It's just what I'm used to. It is my preference, but I have taught a little bit of photography. It's in my Pinterest course, and I do specifically use the iPhone for a lot of it because I know that's what people have access to. So, I mean, it does the job for sure.
Yeah. And so this started off as a hobby, the photography. Did it then turn into a career? And were you focused on like senior photos or family, baby, that kind of a thing?
It did. So, it started as a hobby. Don't I'm trying to I mean, my memory's bad here, but I don't think I bought that camera thinking I'm going to be a photographer and have a career in it. It did kind of happen by accident. I started taking pictures just because I enjoyed it. People, you start taking pictures, you start posting them, and then people start asking you to take their pictures.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I did kind of stumble upon it that way. I took some prom photos actually. So my husband's a teacher, and some of his kids came by, and I did their prom photos. And when I posted those, a local wedding photographer saw them, and she's like, "You need to be helping me." So that's kind of how I stumbled into wedding photography and turning it into a career. So I mainly did weddings, and then I did high school seniors. So those were the
Okay.
two areas that I really loved.
Did that freak you out?
Um, yes and no. I started out by helping, so I recommend you start out by helping as a second shooter. Don't even
Mm-hmm.
remember my terms. I've been out of it for a while now. So that takes a lot of the pressure off, obviously, if you're not the main photographer. But yeah, when you're they are very stressful. So I did weddings for, I mean, maybe 7 years, and I had heard it before I got to that 7 year mark that a lot of photographers don't make it past 7 years
Hmm.
just because of the burnout and the stress. And it's a high pressure job for sure. So
Yeah.
I did it for about 7 years and then transitioned out of it.
So I'm very intrigued how this transition to quilting happened. So tell me all the things.
Yeah, so I was doing the photography thing and then I picked up the quilting thing. And so since I had already turned one hobby into a career, I picked up a new hobby, which is quilting. And I actually didn't make my first quilt and like fall in love with it and become obsessed. It took a while, but I wanted to keep it a hobby. So
Mhm.
I resisted turning quilting into a career actually for a long time because I had already done that once and it kind of can suck the joy out of it.
Mhm.
So I was determined to keep quilting a hobby, and I was successful in that for about a year. So, and then I got sucked into turning it into a career, and it started because I was asked to create the pattern for the quilts I was making. Um, and so
Okay.
I was resistant. I did start it out kind of slow,
Mhm.
but what I found was that I enjoyed that challenge of figuring it out. And I really fell into in love with quilting when I started creating the patterns because for me it was the two things, the creating and the challenge of creating that kind of took off.
Yeah. So when you started quilting, well, I'm intrigued because you said at first it wasn't a major like love. You said,
Yeah, that's a good question. So, I mean, the first one I made was out of obligation. So I agreed to do like a memory quilt for someone. And I mean, if you've ever made a t-shirt quilt, they they're kind of a lot of work. They're not
mhm.
as fun for me. So that was my first quilt. And then I was on Pinterest trying to figure out how to make the t-shirt quilt. And all of a sudden I started seeing all of these like bright, colorful, fun quilts. And so I decided to okay, I made this memory quilt and now I'll make one for each of my kids. And so I picked out a quilt to make for each of my kids. I got through them. I mean, they were okay. It was okay. I enjoyed it a little bit. But it wasn't until I started like just kind of playing around and designing and coming up with my own things that I really got into it. So that's really how I went from like not really liking that first quilt to like, whoa, this is a lot of fun. It was
Yeah.
a process. It was a process of like maybe 2 years even until I started like becoming what I would say more obsessed with it. Before that, I'd put it away for the summer and, I would not sew for a while and then I might pull it back out in the winter. But now it's
Yeah. Because the timing of it, I'm trying to think. So I started the boxes in what, 2016?
oh, okay.
Was that around the time that you started?
Yeah. So my first quilt pattern that I officially like launched was 2015.
Okay.
So
Because I wanna say, yeah, you were on my radar from the get-go. I actually tested one of your patterns back in the day. I was so honored to be a tester.
what you were?
Yeah, I
I
wanted,
don't
is it
remember.
City Tiles? Is that the name of?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think that was number 3. Yeah, my
Yeah.
3rd one.
Yeah, and I was like, "Oh, I'm a big deal, like, I got to be a tester for Emily Dennis, you know?"
Oh gosh, and at that time I was just like maybe flattered if anybody even knew what was going on in my world.
Uh, well, I didn't even know what testers were. I started seeing a few people like, "I tested this pattern for so and so." I was like, "What is this test? I want that, like, I wanna do that," and now it seems with a couple of years, it's just evolved and become this whole thing, but I'm curious with, pattern writing. So, we had Megan of Then Came June on the podcast a while back, and she said that you taught her how to use Adobe. So, how did you know how to use Adobe Illustrator, and is that what you've always used to write your patterns?
Oh, yes. So actually, I learned how to use Adobe in my photography days. So I was very lucky in that time where I was doing my education from Google. I also got an education in Adobe at the same time. And so that's what I do write my patterns with. And I remember FaceTiming Megan and she was, I don't even know what she was trying to do, but I was like, oh, well, let's share our screens and I'll show you how to do some squares and half square triangles in Adobe. And it was just like a simple little tutorial on how to make a simple shape. And yeah, so I've always used Adobe products and I credit that to, I learned it in my photography days. So it was something I was able
Yeah.
to carry over from that.
Did you learn Photoshop first and then the other Adobe things, or like how did that go?
I did. So I mainly learned Photoshop as a photographer, but once you learn one Adobe program, I don't know, do you use Adobe products?
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah. So once you learn one Adobe product, all of the commands are kind of the same.
Mhm.
So it's easy. It's easier to learn a new one if you already are familiar with one of them. I actually wrote my first pattern though, believe it or not, in Mac Pages.
Oh, really?
Yes, and I actually designed shapes in Mac Pages too.
And
And
it
believe it or not,
worked.
the commands from Mac Pages carried over to Adobe actually pretty well. So I wasn't using like InDesign or Illustrator for photography. I did learn Photoshop, but um yeah, it was strange. It was actually kind of funny to think that those commands carry over so well between the two
Yeah.
products.
Well, and even I use Canva sometimes, and the commands work in there too. And I don't know if that's a Mac thing or not, but I'm like, oh, that's very convenient. That worked here. Okay. So you use InDesign now to write your patterns?
I do. So I like do all my drawing in Illustrator and I use InDesign to write my patterns.
Mm-hmm.
Like actually to what would you call format them.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people use Illustrator only for both,
Mm-hmm.
to format and to make their shapes. Um, and I've always used InDesign. And honestly, I probably only use like 20% of it. Like I
Right.
should
Same.
take a course on how to properly do it because I know there's a lot of shortcuts that I'm missing.
Right.
Um, but
No, I'm
those
the
are the
same.
two. Really? Do you
I
draw in
actually,
Illustrator?
yeah, and I just started using InDesign a couple years ago. The whole time I'd been using Adobe for everything. And then when I did start using InDesign, there are some major benefits like the paragraphs and I don't know, just some things. Like I said, I'm only probably using 20% of it, but it does make it easier. So, and the margins and all that. So now I feel like I'm getting geeky.
There's ways you can like format the entire thing at one time. Like
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I'm linking things properly to do all of that, but it is kind of what I started with way back
Yeah.
when, and it's how I've continued. But
I did just sign up for a course for InDesign because I'm like, I know there's more I can be tapping into. So I will share more if it is of good value. So
good idea. Like an online
yeah. Well, it's
something
paper and
online or in
oats
person. Okay.
online, and it's lifetime
Okay. Cool.
access. So anyhow, worth checking out. But yeah, so when I also remember you at one point, because you have an interest to share business too. You have a Pinterest course, and we'll dive more into that, and some other course business related things that you share, which is near and dear to my heart. I feel like there's those who love quilting and do it as a business, and then some of us really just love and gravitate towards the business side of things. And so I feel like we, connect on that.
That would describe me to a T, definitely. What is that saying I've heard? Like, you create a business just to have a business rather than like, I'm totally blanking on the saying, but like, I love the business side of it just as much as I love like the creating side of it.
Hmm.
So I think in some capacity, I'll always be doing some sort of a business that I can grow and learn and create. And
Same. Which I had a friend, we were talking about doing a retreat, and she was like, "Yeah, we could do a quilting retreat." I'm like, I would way rather do a business retreat." And she's like, "You can just relax and have fun." I'm like, "That is my fun. Like, that's, I love the business." There was somewhere where you posted about how you'll have to help me with the wording or the idea behind it, but that this whole time you felt imposter syndrome, if you will, like, who am I to come in? And you started earning money and, like, on the same level of what your husband's doing, who got this degree. So, can you speak to us about that a little bit?
yes, so I have really struggled with some money mindset issues over the years.
Mm-hmm.
Very much has been a struggle to me of like, you hear that phrase of like fear of success, and you're like, yeah, whatever. That's like who really fears success. And I had that. It was a
Mm-hmm.
real thing of like, I think I started to see the potential of like what I could do, and I was like, I wasn't ready for it. Like I didn't know how to handle it. I had a lot of money mindset issues. I didn't think I didn't think I deserved to make an income that I was making or could potentially make. And I think a lot of that stems back from, well, for one, I don't have a college education. I didn't do college. And so I think in my mind, it was always like, well, since I didn't go to college, I'm not allowed to make more than X dollars of money a year. And I would just equate like that kind of stuff to money. And it took me a long time to really work through those issues and get past them. I'm happy
Mm-hmm.
to say that today I have.
Yay,
It's
good.
not such a big issue for me anymore, but it did take a long time to accept the fact that it was okay to make money. It was okay to make money as a woman. It was okay to make money
Mm-hmm.
as a mom. And it was okay to make money doing something that you actually had a lot of fun doing. Because I think there's a lot of people who struggle with that. If this is so much fun and it doesn't feel like work, do I really deserve it?
Right.
So, yeah, there's
Which,
been a
and
lot of different ways I've had to work through that.
I mean, it's not something I'd go and tell my kids. However, I don't feel like you need this college degree. I've just seen it. You don't, because I've seen it enough times, and I have a degree. I do nothing related to that, and
And
yeah.
I think that's more and more common. And had I
Mhm.
went to school to get a degree, I wanted to be a teacher back in the day. I don't think I would
Yep.
have lasted in the classroom.
No, I
Um,
didn't. That
and
was
there's
my
been a few
degree.
different. Oh, are you serious?
Yeah, and even my husband's like, I taught English and I taught like in downtown Houston. I thought I'd be like the stand and deliver, change the world, and it really just burned me out. And even my
Oh my gosh.
husband's
How many
like,
years
I
did
don't
you do it?
one.
Oh, okay. Well, you tried.
I know. Well, to be honest, I had kids, and maybe a
Okay.
little sooner than expected. And I was like, I'm going to stay home and I'll go back. I started tutoring, and this is not about me. Whatever. That was my journey. So the point is, I'm not
No,
using
that's
my degree.
interesting. Yeah. Yeah, and
Yeah.
I think a lot of people don't. And my advice too for like my kids, if they don't know what to do, I'm like, well, go for at least a business degree.
Right.
Get some marketing experience or business, experience, and then there's so much you can do with that, and maybe you'll figure
Hmm.
out eventually something else you want to do. But yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people are not working in the field that they went into anyways. So
Yeah. Okay. And your daughter, a while ago, this is probably years ago now, she had started a business of selling like candles or soap or something. Is this true?
No, that was probably, yeah, a sister of mine. She
Okay.
was doing
Okay.
like natural products for like kids and babies and stuff.
Is she
So
still doing that?
she actually just recently she's stopped.
Okay.
So she was doing that for many years, but yeah, she gave that up actually within the past year, I think. So I'm not sure
Okay.
why, because I think it maybe became all consuming, trying to keep up
Mhm.
with demand and stuff.
Yeah,
Because she was doing a physical product too.
true. So how did you help what helped you overcome this mindset of like I'm not worthy. Who am I to be earning this, you know?
Well, I would say it was just many years of getting through it. I would listen to different podcasts and stuff at the time and try to get through it. But I also had a couple of friends um, who really helped me with that. One of them in particular, we talked directly about these issues of like women in particular undervaluing themselves and women in the quilting industry
Mhm.
undervaluing themselves.
Yep.
Um, and she really like helped me with that, so and then I had another friend. um I went on a road trip with her and this was probably some sort of a spiritual awakening on this road trip, and she
Mhm.
really just got me thinking of like I almost had to admit to myself what I was afraid of and just kind of digging down and thinking about what it was that was preventing me from thinking I was worth earning an income. And, after that road trip, it just got me it almost like before that road trip, I thought I was only allowed to make a certain amount. Like, there was always a cap, in my mind, I had this imaginary cap. And then after that road trip, it's just we talk so much about, like, these like, why are we putting limits on ourselves? And I came out of that road trip just like, wow, yeah, there's like, why do I keep saying I'm only allowed to earn X amount? Or why do I put that on myself? And something about that road trip just really got me thinking that it's okay and I can take the cap off. I can like I don't have to have a ceiling of earning, and
Mhm.
just keep doing what I love and see what happens.
Do you ever because before I'm like, what if I earned this amount per year? And it scares me to say that. Have you ever had that experience?
I did. Yeah. I mean, I I was so undervaluing myself. It's not even funny. Um, I worked I've always worked. I had a day job. I did medical billing. And I worked part-time and I got a part-time salary from it. And at that time, I mean, I was an uneducated stay-at-home mom. So like I thought that part-time income was like that was it. That was
Mhm.
good. Um, and then as I started creating my own businesses and earning my own income, I was like, oh, I wasn't making very much.
Mhm.
And I remember it was a couple of years ago now, but there was a month where I made more that month that I made for my entire salary in a year. And I was like, whoa, that's crazy. I mean, and again, it was a part time job where like I wasn't making a ton, but I thought I was, so it
Right.
was like
Yep.
just all these like moments of like, wow, and going through those stages where, yeah, I mean, it's been, it's been a journey, that's for sure.
Yeah. And I'm curious for you, what are the different sources of revenue and what is your biggest like are your quilt patterns the biggest piece of the pie for you?
For me, it is. It's quilt patterns. That is my bread and butter.
Mhm.
Um, I many years ago, I thought you had to do all these things, trying to make income through all these different like sources. And then a few years ago, I realized that my quilt patterns alone to support me.
Mhm.
So I started really focusing on that. So mostly my income comes from my quilt patterns. and that's in the form of like my retail shop online and then distributor orders and like wholesale orders.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then I do the create your day job. So that's the business side of my business.
Uh-huh.
I just, we have a toddler now. So I have 3 teenagers and we have a toddler. And I really did start create your day job before she was born, or around the time, probably before she was born. And so time has been a little more limited these days. So that is something
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of been put more on the back burner, is that education side of it, like you like to do.
Yeah.
But I do still have some courses through that, and I earn income through that. And then I get a teeny tiny bit of income, like affiliate income through my blog and stuff like that. But that's never been a huge focus of mine. That's just not how I use my blog. So
Mm-hmm. And you do these Robert Kaufman bundles. Does that bring like revenue for you, or what? How does that work?
yeah, yeah. So I did my first one. It's been about a year or so, and you actually get royalties from that. So just like maybe a pattern designer gets
Mm-hmm.
royalties through their manufacturer, I'll get royalties on units sold. So it's not
Oh,
like a
okay.
huge thing, and it's because I'm sure it's significantly less than like a designer themselves would get. Because I'm not actually
Mm-hmm.
designing the fabric; I'm just curating
Mm-hmm.
already designed or already made fabric. But that's actually been a fun little thing that I've been doing, because I, I never say never, but I don't see myself designing fabric. So it's like a good
Mm-hmm.
alternative to designing fabric. So I get
Yeah.
to, play around with this um, bundle that I curated and create patterns or make quilts around it in much the same way maybe a designer would with their own
Yeah.
fabric.
And you've done a very good job of creating a brand. Was that intentional? Are you just very honed in on the colors that you like?
You know, I think that was probably more intentional than I realized.
Okay.
As far as like the brand in general, or just like my design style. I don't know what.
Both. Yeah, but I was thinking more of the colors, but yeah, style of quilt patterns too.
Yeah, I mean, I think colors, we all naturally start to gravitate towards a certain thing. It's funny because I don't think we see ourselves as cohesive as other people
Mhm.
see us. Like,
Mhm.
I would look at your work and I see very cohesive, tones and everything. And sometimes I feel like I look at my own and it feels all over the place. So,
No, yours is very on brand. It is, yeah.
okay, good. Well, the good news is then I don't necessarily intentionally do that. So maybe, when you just gravitate towards the things you like, it comes out more cohesive than we think.
Yeah. And as far as your quilt patterns, I mean, do you have I don't know, how have you designed those? What does that process look like for you? Is it intentional about like, well, I want to keep within this kind of a look?
Um, I at first it probably just started out with what I enjoyed doing or what I wanted to do at the time.
Mhm.
Um, and then I think just like probably your colors, how they start to get more cohesive, your designs start to get more cohesive. I
Mhm.
was accused once, actually. I think I designed a pattern. Gosh, I wish I could remember. It was probably a star pattern, which stars are very common, right?
Mhm. Yep.
And I got this email, and somebody, it wasn't mean, but it was like, your patterns all look the same. You should design something else.
Oh.
I was like,
Uh,
oh. I mean, at first I was like, well, what? Whatever. And I kind of started
yeah.
thinking about it, and it kind of made me laugh. And I was like, well, that may be true. But I think over time, you do develop a style. And
Mhm.
over time, I mean, I think I have 40 something patterns out. You also learn what people like. So
Yep,
you're not going to
totally.
put out a pattern that people don't like.
Yep.
And so you do gravitate towards what you know works. And so I
Mhm.
thought, when I got that email, I did respond, and I responded in a little bit of a snarky way.
I cannot picture you
Uh,
being snarky at all.
and it was more like passive aggressively nice. Because it was just like, it was so funny to me. I was like, well, if you don't like my patterns, there's a lot of them out there. And I said something to that effect of like, well, the good
Mhm.
news is there's tons of quilt patterns out there to choose from.
Yep.
But you do, I have found over the years, it's like, I'm not going to put out something that I know won't sell well. And so I do kind of focus on like what I know has done well in the past and what I think will do well
Mhm.
going forward.
It's very interesting on that topic. I have seen people really attack success from others. You know, they will look, and I've heard things like about my better together. It's too simple. It's half square triangles. Honestly, if you know how to make a quilt, you could look at that and just whatever, you know, figure it out. It's my best seller. It's my best seller, you know? And then I have another alumni who has a look, and I heard someone say, like, I wish she'd really branch out and do something different. And I'm like, now, why are people so, why do they care? For one, two, they're attacking the thing that's making them successful. You know, it's almost like it comes from this place of insecurity of like, maybe they don't deserve the success because it's not, I don't know. It's a very, like this person who emailed you, why do they care? You know, you're having success.
Yeah, see, and my thought was that she didn't know I was having success. I think she genuinely
Oh,
thought she was giving me good advice. Like, I think she's like,
okay.
if you, because I think that was part of her email was like, you could sell better if you had more variety. And which again, it was like kind of funny because it was the total opposite. You actually can sell better when you have a
Mm-hmm.
good point of view
Yep.
and when you know, like I know what sells and what doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, for that one in particular, I think it was like she genuinely thought she was helping me because it was nice. It was a nice email. It just kind
Okay.
of made me laugh that she thought
Right.
I should do something different.
Right.
And
That
I was
is
like,
funny.
well, I would if I could. I mean, trust me, I mean, I can only come up with what my brain will come up with.
Right?
So
Yeah. The gears
that's
go
what you're
this
gonna
way.
get.
Yep. If you like it, great.
Hmm.
So if you, and I know you've also said before, I've seen you post like, I don't know why everyone follows me or why I have success, but if you had to think of like why people love you, for one, I have to say this. This is so funny. I've seen it over and over again. Everyone talks about how you are so sweet and they wish they were best friends with you. And you are like, so you're very likable. So there's that. And this is coming from I'm analyzing it from a business standpoint. Be likable. But what else helps you have success?
Your listeners can't see me, but you can see me shaking my head like I don't know. I was sitting down with I was sitting with my sister-in-law one time and she's like, "I don't like mean this to be rude." She's like, "But who are all those people following you?" And I looked at her and I said, "I have no idea." I was like, "I don't know." I mean, okay, I can analyze it a little bit and think back of like why people are there.
Hmm.
And I've always just tried to like show up. I've always just tried to show up and show up as myself, and I've never tried to like be somebody I'm not. And
Hmm.
there's been times, to be honest, I've had to take a break from Instagram because I'm like, I feel like I'm turning into a superficial person, or
Yeah.
like it just doesn't feel genuine right now. And so I just need to take a break so that I can come back and just be normal again.
Hmm. Yep.
But so I think there's that. I showed up. So I always showed up. I remember the first time I did my first story and I had to record that thing like 10 times because my voice was shaking to do a story.
Right.
So you just show up and you do it.
Yeah.
And then I think consistency too. Like I showed up and I continue to show up. So consistency
Hmm.
will go a long way, I think, when it comes to Instagram. But
Yeah.
yeah, I
And
don't know. I don't know why people are there and still showing up, but they are.
well, and it sounds like you do have a mind for business, you know, that you do analyze what is selling well, what's resonating with people. And I think too, just you have a good eye. So, I mean, things that you post that resonate with me, your home, redoing your home, living in Michigan was intriguing. You lived on the peninsula. Is that right? The Upper Peninsula?
Yes. Yeah.
That was
Yeah.
intriguing.
So I think there were some things I knew my reader or not readers, my audience liked. The weird thing is every time I posted house photos or like or remodeling stuff, those got more engagement than anything I've ever posted before. So
Hmm.
people like the house stuff.
Yeah, I do.
And I did. I lived in a very unique, yeah. I lived in a very unique area where we got all that snow, and I think people couldn't fathom it, so they were interested to see it. I live in
Yeah.
boring southern Minnesota now, so I don't
Hey,
know how people engaged there.
I'm from Minnesota. It's a great
But
place.
yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And your
It's
husband,
we do love living here, but I do miss the beauty.
yeah. Well, and I remember meeting someone who did a lot of camping, and I was like, yeah, I know someone. By no, I mean, we're Instagram friends, right? I was like, I know someone who lives in the Upper Peninsula. They were like, no, you probably don't. Are you sure? Like, not a lot of people live there. I was like, yeah, Yeah, I think that's where she lives, like, but it
Yeah,
is
there were a few of us that lived there.
yeah, and I remember, like, your daughter having to go to an orthodontist appointment, and it took I don't remember how long, but I was like, "Oh my gosh, that's a very different way of life," you know?
Yeah, it was a 2-hour drive to go to the
Mhm.
orthodontics. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's commitment, that's love.
So yeah, there were a few things. Like I think, I shared where I lived and I shared we moved a lot. I never shared all the stories about why we moved, but I think people were so intrigued by that. They're like, why are these people moving again? And so there were just I think things that like I knew my audience liked. And the good thing was like I enjoyed sharing those things. I always found it fun. I always found it motivating to share home improvement projects and stuff like that. Um, but yeah, I mean, there's things that you share that your audience likes. I've always tried to like not be boring on stories. And I know that's easier said than done. And I've always tried to leave a little bit of mystery on stories.
Hmm.
Like, I'm not going to share my life story. You don't see everything, but enough where people want to keep following to see what's next.
That is very interesting and true. And is this intentional? You don't share much about your older kids, where I do have the intrigue. I'm like, how are they? What are they doing? But I mean, maybe for their sake or yours or
Yeah, it's for them, it's been a privacy issue. So I did share them a lot actually, especially in my early photography days. They were my main subjects. I don't share them now. And my older kids and my husband, they're actually really funny. And so like when we get sometimes like our family vacations even and stuff, the things that we do, like I'm like, oh, I kind of wish I shared that part of our life because it is a glimpse that nobody gets to see. But
Mhm.
I do it for their privacy. I mean, I don't know. You don't have teenagers quite yet, do you?
I do. I have a
How old is your oldest?
freshman. She's almost 15.
Oh, okay.
Mhm.
Okay. You have to get approval from teenagers
Mhm.
to post anything on social media. So I kind of got
Yeah.
sick of asking for permission, so I just don't post them.
Well, and mine would never give me permission. They're like,
But yeah,
"No,
there is
don't
a
post that."
yeah. So I actually think mine are kind of funny where they wouldn't mind being on social media, but it has to all be approved. So I'm like, I don't work that way. I kind of post when I want to post and when I don't, I don't. But
Mhm.
um yeah, so there's a big part of my life I think that people don't really get to see and I don't know. But there's a few things I think over the years I've kind of figured out what people like and want to explore of. So
Yeah. And there is some to that just privacy of keeping some things not public, that's kind of nice.
yeah. Yeah, definitely. And I've even over the last few years I've probably stepped back. I don't know, more than I'd like to. Like I know I used to share a lot more even than I do now. Um And sometimes I think it'd be fun to go back, but I also kind of enjoy my privacy a little bit more right now too. So
Yeah.
I'm always a big believer in doing what feels right at the moment.
Mhm.
I've never tried to force anything. Nothing. I've never tried to force anything when it comes to my business decisions. And I've never tried to force anything like through Instagram and like growing an audience and all of that stuff. It's like, I've really believed in like just kind of doing what feels right, feels good, and letting it kind of naturally, organically take shape.
Yeah. Well, it's worked out very well for you, which I cannot help but wondering. You said your youngest, let's see, she starts school soon, like full-time school, is that right?
Not yet. She's 3. She's only 3.5,
Okay.
so she'll be in preschool in a couple of years here. Or she'll be in
Okay.
preschool this year and kindergarten in a couple of years.
So when she is in school, it sounds like you'll have more time. Do you think you'll do more business related things, or I don't know, what do you think that will look like?
I don't know. You know, I go back and forth. A lot of people have this like growth mindset. And I've actually kind of admitted to myself that I'm not in a growth stage right now. I'm in
Mhm.
a maintenance stage right
Yeah.
now. And I like it. Like I'm content where things are. I'm happy with how my business is going. It still continues to grow year after year, but
Mhm.
like I'm not pushing it to like grow. And
Right.
so I'm kind of in a maintenance stage. And mostly I think that is because I have the toddler. We do utilize daycare. Trust me, I couldn't do this as much as I do even if I had her home full time. So she's not home full time. And I do think about what this will look like in a couple of years. And I think that's why I'm content in a maintenance stage right now is that I know in a couple of years I have that time
Mm-hmm.
coming. Because that's when I started my business. I started my business when all of my kids were in school and I had 7 hours a day to run a business. And then the toddler came around a couple of years ago when I had already established everything. So it worked out fine.
Yeah.
But I know in a couple of years I'll have those full days back. So who knows?
Yeah.
Maybe,
Yeah. I'm excited to
maybe I'll be
see.
inspired. Maybe I won't.
Right. Well, and
We'll see
I
what
go
happens.
through those ebbs and flows where sometimes I'll see someone else put out a major goal and I'm like, "Oh yeah, I should reach for that too." And then I have to step back. I'm like, "Do I want that? Like how much growth do I want?" Like I don't know. And how much how what I don't know, all the things.
Yeah. The other was it like a month ago or something? I was driving home from somewhere and I was like, I should get a space. I should rent a space and move out of the house. And I texted Megan. Then came June. She's like, I thought you wanted to stay home. And I was like, yeah, well, I do. I love being at home, but I should get a space. And I was like, why do I want a space all of a sudden? I would hate to go to work every day. And I
Right.
think there are a few reasons that maybe that would happen and could happen, but I'm like, yeah, you don't have to do things the
Right.
way everybody else does them. And so, I mean, and there were a couple of real reasons I've thought about like having a space. It would be nice. I feel like then I could hire somebody to come do all the stuff I don't want to do.
Mhm.
I mean,
Mhm.
I could hire somebody and come to my house and do it, but if you had the space, I feel like it'd be easier. So, oh, plus I'm
Yeah.
taking over my house with my business. So there is that.
Right.
So,
I know. Yeah. When we moved to our house and I have my like craft sewing room, I was like, just so you know, this space, it's got to be okay to be messy. Like I will, not I will. The house will be clean, but I need you all to just know that this is going to be a disaster. And sometimes it's really clean and tidy, but like I can't have that pressure of this needs to be clean and creative space is a mess. But yeah, no, I've gone through in the past where I'll see people do certain things and I'm like, oh, well, they're having success with that. Maybe I should do that. And it just to really step back and do it like what you said, what feels right for me and good. And that's usually different from what someone else is doing.
yeah, and I do think success will come a lot easier if you're actually doing something that you enjoy doing and you feel good about doing and that you
Hmm.
want to do.
Absolutely.
I don't think forcing it is ever going to be a recipe for success.
No, and it comes from this scarcity mentality and you're scrambling and it feels, I don't know. I know it takes one to know one. I've been there. So, for someone who is thinking of starting a creative career, what is some a tip or advice that you would give?
Oh gosh, I wish I had some really good words of wisdom because I'm probably going to say what everybody else says. It is to just start.
Yeah,
It is to just start because the year from now, you will be so thankful that today you decided to start. I've always thought about it that way as like a year from now, I'm going to be glad I did this. Or a year from now, things are going to like be good. Or like a year from now, like the growth that you'll have a year from now is going to be good. Because it's very scary to start something. I mean, and my other piece of advice would be to start your email list and like start that right away. So as the example, for an example with that email list, like nobody wants to start it because they're going to be like 10 people signed up. Well, that's right now, but think about a year from now. Like you're never going to get to hundreds of people if you don't start today. So,
absolutely.
yeah, I know it's probably been said a million times,
No,
but
I don't even
it
know.
really is.
Everyone
You just
says
have to start.
yeah, everyone says something different.
Oh, okay, good.
And yeah, to hear that motivation to be okay with not having things be perfect at first. To have a small list, embrace that.
Yeah. And to be
And
slow. Yeah.
yeah, be
It's for
slow.
I don't know, maybe I don't know how people do look at me, but I feel like it's been a slow and steady process. I mean, it's taken many years, I feel like, where there's become a lot of consistency in my business and financial consistency. And so it is a slow and steady process. So if you don't start now, you're not going to get to that end result of,
Yep.
consistency.
Which people I feel like, myself included, we look at where someone is right now and assume it's always been that way. And like, well, I want to be where they are right now, but it takes time. But yeah, so what I'm curious, what can we look forward to you releasing next? What's on the dockets for Quilty Love?
So I have a few things coming up for the rest of the year. I try to keep my obligations pretty simple over here. So I'm working on Pin It for Sales right now. I'm updating it and getting it ready for its open period. So I open that up once or twice a year, and that will be coming up probably later this summer. So Pin It for Sales is a Pinterest course that you can use to grow your business through sales and just getting more brand recognition over on Pinterest. So that's coming up soon. And then I'm hoping I did this last year and it was a really good email building opportunity. I did that free pattern. So I did a free scrap stash plus quilt pattern.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think I'll make that an annual thing. I like when things work, I like making it like an annual tradition.
I like
So I think
that.
this summer I'll be coming up with something else like that. And just a simple free pattern that has been a really good list builder. So I'm hoping to get something
Nice.
like that out very soon too.
Awesome. And I have to give a plug about your Pinterest course. The success that you've had with Pinterest has been phenomenal. And for those who are quilters, you touch on the photography and the SEO and just you actually you walk the walk. I mean, some people I feel like teach a course because they know other people have had success with this thing, but you actually have grown a ton with Pinterest and sales. So you know what you're talking about. And it's a great course. So I'll put a link to that in the show notes.
Yeah, Pinterest has always been something I've used as a quilter. So it was pretty organic for me to to use what I used as a quilter, not a quilt pattern designer, and then just kind of
Mhm.
transition it into trying things for my business and putting it into a course that people could replicate.
Yeah, that's awesome and very generous of you. So, thank you so much for being here. It's a busy summer day for you, and I appreciate you taking your time. I know my audience loves you. Like I said, people are like, I just love Emily Dennis. I wish we could be best friends. So, this is like their dose of Emily Dennis and getting to hang out with you. So, thanks for being
Well,
here.
thank you for having me.
Yeah. All right. We'll talk to you later.
Emily, thank you so much for being here on the Craft to Career podcast. You are just such a pleasure, such a joy. One of these days, we are going to meet in real life. I feel like we've known each other already for years, but it'll happen. It will happen. And for you listeners, thank you so much for being here. I know that you loved hearing from Emily. She's just great. So thank you so much for being here on the Craft to Career podcast. We'll see you here next Friday. Until then, have a wonderful week.